The December snow in Buffalo fell like whispered secrets, each flake catching the streetlight as my 4-year-old son Tyler and I stood shivering on my parents' front porch. His tiny fingers clutched his worn teddy bear Mr. Buttons, with one eye missing and stuffing peeking through a tear in his arm. The same bear I'd sewn for him with scraps from my old baby blanket when money was too tight for store-bought toys. "Mama, why won't Grandpa open the door?" Tyler's breath made small clouds in the frozen air. His voice carried that innocent confusion that only children possess, the kind that can shatter a mother's heart with its purity. I knocked again, harder this time. Through the frosted window, I could see the warm, amber glow of their living room, hear the low murmur of the television. My father's silhouette moved past the window, deliberately slow, like he was savoring our desperation. "Dad, please," I called through the door. "The heating got shut off at our apartment. Tyler's been sniffling all week, and it's supposed to drop to 15 below tonight." The door creaked open, just wide enough for my father's weathered face to appear. Behind him, my mother sat in her favorite armchair, the one I used to curl up in as a child when thunderstorms scared me. She was knitting something cream-colored and soft, probably another blanket for the church auction. Her needles never stopped clicking even as she watched us freeze. Well. Dad said, his voice carrying that particular tone I remembered from childhood, the one that made my stomach clench even now at 28. "Look what the wind blew in!" My sister Jessica appeared behind them, holding a steaming mug of hot chocolate topped with marshmallows. She took a deliberate sip, her eyes never leaving mine. "This is rich," she said with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Little Miss Independent needs help again." I swallowed the familiar taste of shame. It had been 3 years since Derek died, 3 years of raising Tyler alone, while my grief threatened to swallow us both. But I'd survived by focusing on Tyler's needs, working double shifts at the diner, scraping together every penny. Until the heating company demanded payment in full, and the landlord started making noises about overdue rent. "It's just for tonight," I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. "Until I can figure something out." Dad's eyes moved to Tyler, who had pressed himself against my leg, sensing the tension even if he didn't understand it. For a moment, just a heartbeat, I thought I saw something flicker across my father's face. But then his gaze hardened as he took in Tyler's dark hair, his brown eyes, the olive skin that marked him unmistakably as Derek's son. "Look at him." Dad muttered, his voice dripping with the same disgust he'd shown 4 years ago when I'd announced my pregnancy. "Little wetback bastard. Probably doesn't even speak English properly." Tyler flinched at the tone even though he was too young to understand the words. But I understood. I understood perfectly. "You know what your problem is, Maya," he said, using the tone he'd perfected when I was 12 and spilled grape juice on his precious carpet. "You never learned that actions have consequences. You ran off with that loser, had a kid you couldn't afford, and now you want us to clean up your mess. Dad, he's your grandson. He's a reminder of your poor choices." The words hit like physical blows. Tyler flinched against my leg, and I felt something cold settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the weather. My mother's knitting needles stopped clicking. "Begging doesn't suit you, Maya. Though I suppose it's about the only thing you're good at these days." Jessica pulled out her phone, the camera light illuminating our faces. "Oh, this is definitely going on my Instagram story. When keeping it real goes wrong." She giggled, the sound sharp in the winter air. "My followers are gonna eat this up." That's when Tyler looked up at me, his brown eyes so much like mine, filled with confusion and hurt. "Mama, are we bad people?" he whispered. The question hit me like a physical blow. Here was my child, my baby, wondering if he deserved this coldness, if he deserved to shiver in the snow while his grandmother sat in her warm chair knitting comfort for strangers. "No, baby," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We're not bad people. Some people just forget how to be good." Dad stepped back, already closing the door. "Streets are full of shelters, Maya. Maybe you'll learn something about responsibility sleeping in one." "What about Tyler?" I tried one last time, desperation bleeding into my voice. Mom looked up from her knitting, then her face placid as winter moonlight. Should have thought about that before you decided to be a failure. The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in my bones. Shh! We spent that night in my car parked behind a 24-hour Walmart. I ran the engine in intervals to keep us warm, watching the gas gauge drop, while Tyler slept across my lap. Every few minutes I'd check to make sure he was still breathing, terrified that the cold would steal him from me the way it had almost stolen my hope. Mama, Tyler stirred around 3 a.m, his voice thick with sleep. When I grow up, will I have a warm house? Yes, baby, I whispered into his hair. I promise you'll never be cold again. As I said those words, something crystallized inside me. Not just determination, something sharper. Something with teeth. I thought about the family photos that used to hang in my parents' hallway. The ones they'd taken down after I married Derek. Me at 5, gap-toothed and grinning, sitting on Dad's shoulders. But even then, even in those happy moments, there had been conditions. Smile pretty for the camera, Maya. Don't mess up Daddy's shirt. Be perfect or be nothing. The love had always been conditional, I realize now. It just took me 28 years to see it. I remembered being 7, accidentally breaking one of Mom's ceramic angels while dusting. The way her hand connected with my cheek so hard it left fingerprint bruises for a week. Clumsy, worthless girl, she'd hissed. Why can't you be careful like Jessica? Jessica, who was 2 years older, and had learned early that the way to survive in our house was to be the golden child, perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect cruelty toward me when our parents demanded it. I remembered being 12, coming home with a B+ on my math test, my best grade ever in my hardest subject. Dad had looked at the paper for exactly 3 seconds before tearing it in half. Jessica got an A in advanced calculus when she was your age. What's wrong with you? Are you stupid or just lazy? The worst part wasn't the words, it was how I'd scrambled to pick up the pieces of that test paper, apologizing for disappointing him, begging for another chance to prove I wasn't worthless. I remembered being 15, finally working up the courage to tell them about the scholarship offers from 3 different colleges. Mom had been making dinner, and she'd set down her wooden spoon with deliberate precision. College for what? So you can waste more of our money? You're not smart enough for college, Maya. You'd just fail and embarrass us. Dad had nodded from behind his newspaper. Your mother's right. Community college, maybe. Learn something useful like typing or filing. Leave the real education to people who can handle it. Jessica had smirked from the kitchen table where she'd been working on her Harvard application essays. And when Derek Martinez came into my life during my senior year, beautiful, kind Derek, with his warm brown eyes and dreams of becoming a teacher, my parents' conditional love finally showed its true face. A Martinez. Mom had spat when I'd brought him home for dinner. What's next? Maya, are you going to start speaking Spanish and having anchor babies? Dad had been more direct. No daughter of mine is going to disgrace this family by breeding with some wetback. End it now or get out. But Derek loved me. Actually loved me without conditions or requirements or demands that I shrink myself to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable. When I chose him, I chose myself for the first time in my life. They'd made good on their threat. The day I married Derek, they'd had the locks changed and my belongings thrown on the lawn. The family photos came down that same week. For 6 beautiful years, Derek proved them wrong about everything. He became the teacher he'd dreamed of being, working with kids who reminded him of himself, smart, hopeful, overlooked. He loved Tyler with a fierce tenderness that made my heart ache with gratitude. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee kissed better, every proud smile at Tyler's small victories. Then the cancer came. Pancreatic. Stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. Derek fought for 8. I watched the strongest man I'd ever known waste away in a hospital bed, his beautiful brown eyes never losing their warmth, even as his body betrayed him. His last words were about Tyler. Make sure he knows how proud I am. Make sure he knows he's perfect just as he is. Derek died on a Tuesday in March, leaving behind medical bills that swallowed our savings and life insurance that barely covered the funeral. I'd been working double shifts at the diner ever since, but it was never enough. Never enough for the rent, never enough for the heat, never enough to give Tyler the stability his father had promised him. And Tyler. Tyler was Derek's son in every visible way. His dark hair, his warm brown eyes, his olive skin that tanned beautifully in summer. But more than that, he had Derek's gentle heart, his curiosity about the world, his way of finding joy in small things, even when everything else fell apart. One look at him and anyone could see exactly why my parents had slammed that door in our faces. He wasn't just their grandson. He was living proof of their daughter's ultimate betrayal. A walking reminder that I had chosen love over their hatred, hope over their bitterness. And now, with Derek gone, he was also a painful echo of everything they'd destroyed with their cruelty. If they'd just accepted us, if they'd opened their hearts instead of hardening them, Derek might have been here tonight too, helping me carry Tyler through the snow. We might have been a family seeking shelter together instead of two broken pieces of something beautiful that they'd refused to acknowledge. The truth was, it hadn't happened overnight. It had been years of systematic destruction, 28 years of teaching me I was worthless, while Jessica watched and learned to participate. The way Dad's fists found my ribs when I spoke out of turn. The way Mom locked me in the basement for hours when I embarrassed the family. The way they both convinced me that the bruises and the fear and the constant walking on eggshells was normal, love was family. But Tyler had never done anything to deserve their ice. He was innocent, pure, still believing the world was good because I'd protected him from learning otherwise. Until tonight. 3 days later, I swallowed my pride and called my college friend Rachel, now a successful divorce attorney in Chicago. We'd lost touch when I got married and moved to Buffalo, but she remembered me. More than that, she offered me a job as a paralegal in her firm. "You were always the smartest one in our class, Maya," she said over the phone. "Law school may not have worked out, but you've got instincts. Come to Chicago, start over." Within a week, Tyler and I were in a small apartment on the South Side, and I was learning the intricate dance of legal warfare. During my lunch breaks, I researched everything I could about my parents' life. What I found was enlightening. My father's construction company was built on a foundation of lies. Underpaid workers, substandard materials, bribes to building inspectors. My mother's charity work was a tax shelter that funneled money into their personal accounts. They'd spent decades portraying themselves as pillars of the community, while grinding their boot heels into anyone who couldn't fight back, including their own daughter. But I was learning to fight now. And I had something they'd never possessed, actual legal knowledge to go with my rage. The plan took 2 years to unfold. 2 years of Tyler asking why we couldn't visit Grandma and Grandpa, and me having to explain that sometimes people we love hurt us so badly that we have to love them from far away. 2 years of him drawing pictures of our family, where the grandparents were always on a separate piece of paper, never part of the house where we lived. "Will they ever say sorry, Mama?" he asked one evening, adding windows to a drawing of our Chicago apartment. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said honestly. "But we're okay without their sorry, aren't we?" He considered this with the gravity only a 6-year-old can muster. "Yeah, we make good soup together. And you read the voices really funny. God, I love this kid." The first domino fell when a former employee of Dad's construction company reached out to Rachel's firm. Workers' compensation fraud wage, theft safety violations dating back 15 years. The state labor board got very interested very quickly. The second domino was Mom's charity. An anonymous tip to the IRS about discrepancies in their filings led to an audit that uncovered years of financial irregularities. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't have to. I just pointed investigators in the right direction. Let them discover what had always been there, hidden under layers of small-town respectability and church potluck friendliness. The beautiful thing about investigations is their momentum. Once you give authorities a reason to look closely, they tend to find everything. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was helping Tyler with his homework first-grade math that seemed impossibly complex for such a small person when my phone rang. My mother's number flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. But Tyler looked up from his addition problems, and something in his expression made me pick up. Maya. Mom's voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. Honey, we need to talk. The endearment hit wrong after 2 years of silence. About what? We're in some trouble. Legal trouble. The house. We might lose the house. Your father's business is... Her voice cracked. Everything's falling apart. I set down Tyler's pencil and walked to the window of our little apartment. Chicago glittered below us, full of possibilities that existed because we'd had the courage to start over. I'm sorry to hear that. I said and meant it. Despite everything, I was sorry. Sorry that it had come to this. Sorry that they'd chosen cruelty over love. Sorry that Tyler would grow up with grandparents who existed only in photographs I'd hidden in a box. Maya, please. We know we made mistakes, but we're family. Could you help us? Maybe we could come stay with you for a while just until we figure things out. The irony was so perfect it made my chest ache. I looked back at Tyler, who was carefully erasing a wrong answer, his tongue poking out in concentration. My beautiful boy, who'd never known the feeling of being unwanted, because I'd made sure of it. Mom, I said quietly, do you remember that night in December when Tyler and I came to your house in the snow? Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Do you remember what you and Dad said to us? That was different. We were just trying to teach you. Teach me that my child didn't deserve warmth, that his grandmother would rather let him freeze than interrupt her knitting. Maya, please, we're desperate. The word hung in the air between us. Desperate. The same desperation I'd felt standing on their porch, watching my breath cloud in the winter air, while they decided whether my child was worth their comfort. You know what, Mom? I said, my voice steady as winter moonlight. You're going to figure this out. You're resourceful people. You'll land on your feet. But Maya, and if you don't... I paused, letting the words settle like snow. Well, there are shelters. I hear Buffalo has several. Maybe you'll learn something about family sleeping in one. I hung up before she could respond. Tyler looked up from his homework. Who was that, Mama? I sat back down beside him, helping him carry the one in his addition problem. Nobody important, baby. How's your math coming along? Good look, I got this one right all by myself. He pointed to a problem with pride that made my heart swell. You did such a good job, I said, kissing the top of his head. You're so smart and strong. I'm proud of you. He beamed at the praise, then went back to his numbers. Simple addition, each equation building toward a larger truth. Outside our window, Chicago hummed with life and possibility. And somewhere far away in a house that had once felt like home, 2 people were learning what it meant to stand in the cold. But here in our warm apartment filled with Tyler's laughter and our hard-won peace, I felt something I'd never expected. I felt free. The snow outside looked different now. Not like punishment falling from an angry sky, but like a blessing. Each flake unique, beautiful, and utterly beyond anyone's control, just like the life we'd built together, Tyler and I. Flake by flake, choice by choice, day by day. Perfect in its imperfection, warm in its truth, and finally completely our own.